In every society, there are those tortured by their own mind, individuals born mentally ill or afflicted by mental illness after suffering a grave misfortune. How we treat such people continues to evolve. Luckily, in much of the world, the cruel medical techniques of the past have largely been abandoned, with insane asylums replaced by modern psychiatric hospitals. But there was once an insane asylum, so notorious that its very name entered the English language as a word for chaos, mayhem, and confusion. That institution is London's Bethlem Royal Hospital, nicknamed Bedlam. The term Bedlam, defined as chaos and confusion, was coined as a descriptor for the Bethlem Asylum during the height of its prominence in the 18th century. Founded in 1247, it was the first hospital of its kind in Great Britain and the first in the world. Never before had there been a place for the mentally infirmed, disabled, or criminally minded to be adequately locked away from society. Being admitted to Bedlam, as it was called, didn't necessarily mean a person was well on their way to being rehabilitated, since treatment implied little more than isolation and experiment. If the patient managed to survive the asylum at all, they and their families were typically worse for wear by the end of their stay. Patients were subjected to multiple horrendous treatments. One common treatment was called rotational therapy, where a patient would be placed in a chair and suspended from the ceiling. The chair was then spun around at the direction of a doctor, sometimes at more than 100 rotations a minute. The patient would often vomit and experience extreme vertigo, but these were seen as healthy reactions with the potential for healing. In 1728, James Monroe became Bethlem's chief physician, initiating a Monroe family dynasty that lasted for roughly 4 generations. As the Monroes shifted their focus from apothecaries to surgeons, treatment procedures grew worse. Patients were routinely beaten, starved, and dunked in ice-cold baths. Patients were also victims to bloodletting, cupping glass therapy, and the inducing of blisters. Treatments were so severe that the facility refused to admit patients deemed too meek to withstand it. Indeed, many did not survive. Modern investigations have uncovered mass graves on the property, dug exclusively for those who died under Bethlem's care. Perhaps most humiliating of all was the time when the facility opened its doors to the general public. Initially, the policy hoped to draw in family members to visit their loved ones. Unfortunately, wealthy Londoners and tourists often paid money to roam the halls of Bedlam, taking in the zoo-like conditions and marvelling at the entertaining psychosis around them. However, some visitors were shocked by what they saw, with one visitor writing in their diary, "One can hardly imagine a human being in a more degraded and brutalized condition than that in which I found this female. She was naked, filthy, and chained with several others against the wall of a damp dark stone cell." Another visitor said the hospital rooms had the appearance of a dog kennel rather than rooms for treatment. Other visitors were often cruel, making taunts and jeers through the bars and peepholes of the rooms. Some inmates were verbally insulted, while others were goaded into doing or saying ridiculous things. By modern standards, this behaviour seemed cruel, degrading, and counterproductive to the patient's mental health. But 18th century medicine dictated that madness robbed the individual of shame, emotion, and reason, to the extent that any verbal or physical abuse they suffered could surely have no lasting effect. Lack of funding can explain why Bethlem became Bedlam. The asylum was a poorly funded government institution, heavily reliant upon the financial support of a patient's family and private donors. Of course, the vast majority of those who found themselves at Bedlam had not come from wealth or even the middle class. Patients were often poor, uneducated, and had been victimized not only by whatever mental infirmities they possessed, but a society that was repelled by them. The Bedlamites, as they were nicknamed, had been subjugated to horrific treatments, both experimental and downright cruel, and were often desired only for the study of their corpses. Thankfully, times have changed. The modern Bethlem Royal Hospital has long since renounced the dark practices of the past, and today its highly trained staff work day and night to care for those who cannot help themselves and give them the correct treatment they need. There is also a museum called the Bethlem Museum of the Mind, where one can go and view some of the gruesome relics once employed by the asylum. As well as some more positive modern art. Next time you go to the doctors with depression, anxiety, or even a common phobia, be thankful you don't live in 1800s England, or you might have experienced one of the treatments Bethlem was famous for. Thanks for watching, hope you enjoyed this, and see you next time.